Welcome back to Steel City Roundtable. My name is Mark Kneebone. Sorry, I've been gone for a couple weeks. Was moving into a new house in Monroeville, so I had a lot of stuff going on, and just got the studio set up. And I get to break in a new studio with an amazing dude, a guy I met back in 2007. Probably directed a lot of my career, Mr. Tony Moreno.
Hey, Mark, what's going on, brother? It's good to see you.
It's great to see you, brother. Why don't you tell people about yourself a little bit?
My name's Tony Moreno. I'm from Southern California. I came here because I married a girl from Youngstown, Ohio, when I was in the Army Airborne. I brought my life out here, and I joined the Pittsburgh Police Department in 1994. I didn't know anybody in Pittsburgh. No one. I had no family here. It was all brand new to me. I didn't know anything about Pittsburgh except for the Steelers, the Pirates, and I really wasn't a hockey fan.
And Permanis.
Yeah,
Probably heard about Permanis. No?
I didn't know anything about it.
Really?
Like I walked into Pittsburgh and had never set foot in the place before. So that was I guess that's kind of like how my life is always run. I'm the oldest child in my family by 6 years from my brother and 10 years from my sister. So I had no role model. You know what I mean? I didn't have anybody that I looked up to show me how to grow up. You know, my dad worked. My mom was raising, babies, and I was just a kid out living my life on my bicycle. So I learned everything on my own. I learned how to play baseball on my own. Just while I'm a visual learner.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm lying right there. I visually learn better, but I'm an instruction reader. Like anything I do, I open up the instruction manual and read it.
I do the same thing. I'm a 3-step learner. I have to read it, write it, and hear it.
Yeah.
If I don't do all three of those things, like when I would take tests in college and shit like that, I would have to rewrite my notes over and over and over again, and that's how I learned.
Right.
Yeah. And I graduated with 3.0, and I went to class like 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you figure it out, everything you realize how you can make it come easy to you. So in all athletics, I just self-taught, and I was good. I excelled at almost all of them. Basketball was my low point because I just don't jump real high, and it's you can't physically make your body jump higher than your body's going to let you.
Yeah.
And I don't run real fast, so I joined the Army. The Army was awesome. I joined as a military police officer. I went to airborne school. I went to Fort Bragg, and I'm friends with those guys to this day. Our unit was christened an airborne unit, and we were the first airborne soldiers to be in that unit when it became airborne. So it's a historical thing. They changed the military police corps. They were going to do away with it and just use private police officers. But they made a new mission, and they were designing the military units to be one stop. Like you go through basic, AIT, and your unit.
Like basically fully self-sufficient.
Yes. And they were scaling down the military action to small mobile units, so you can get a platoon and split them up.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a 5-man squad, and one platoon had the firepower and mobility of an entire battalion of infantrymen, just because of how we were loaded. And it was so we could move across the battlefield and open transportation routes and back up the advancing units. And we were really good at it. So when the government changed right after the invasion of Panama and I got moved to Germany, I went from the best unit in the Army for military police to the absolute worst. And it was frustrating.
You mean they had a Pittsburgh police in the military?
It was something like that. Yeah, there's really incredible parallels there. But I ended up going to Germany, and when I was in Germany, my commander was a female commander who everybody had a problem with because she was like 5'2", and she couldn't hook her own parachute cord.
Sounds really familiar.
Yeah, well, yeah. Kasudas, I can't stand her. And it was exactly the same thing. Little fingers, couldn't do her thing. But while we were in a mission, the first time we were in Panama, I didn't realize when we went in 1988 that it was to survey the area that was going to be attacked. So we were doing strange things that didn't make sense for us at the time. we went out. We did a firing range. So we're on top of the Humvee. Humvees were new. That's how old I am. When I came in the Army, we were still using Jeeps and metal pot helmets and Colt 45s. So the Humvee was all new. The 9mm Beretta 9mm was all new. The mounted 60s and the I believe they were, I'll say M20. I don't remember the nomenclature, but it was a grenade gun on top of the Humvee. So it was just dunk, 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 and firing grenades. It was really cool. Well, I was assisting the range sergeant, who was my platoon sergeant. He was in charge of the range, and this female lieutenant, her name was Poholsky. She was the officer in charge. So we laid out this whole range, and she came back to us, and when we presented it to her for approval, she said, no, I don't want this area here where everybody's going to be standing by. I want it moved. And we said, we can't move it there. That's the red zone. That's a hot zone. I'm ordering you to move it over there. I want this area open. And I look at the sergeant, I'm like, hey, that's on you guys. And he says, well, hey, she gave me the order. Puts it there. The first rounds go down range, and it fires up. 2 Humvees, gets a guy shot. Everybody's bailing out. Red smoke going up. Emergency helicopters coming in. And all of a sudden, she was gone. Like, we came back from cleaning it all up, and she wasn't there anymore. She was no longer on the deployment. We all assumed that she either got kicked out or transferred. The combat movement happens the next year in 1989, goes into 1990. My daughter's born while I'm there, but she had an emergency birth. She had fluid in her lungs, so they were able to bring me home early. I came home at the end of February, and everybody else came home in April. I get orders that the military changed. It used to be where you can make it so you would re-enlist and stay in one place for a while. You can be stabilized. And that's the action that I was doing. Well, the Army changed, and they said, no, you can go from one overseas tour to another. So we're going to move you to wherever we want to go. And they sent me to Germany. And that's how I got there. And I see all these failed people that came from Fort Bragg. And I went, oh, man, it's like getting sent to Zone 5.
Oh, boy. So let's fast forward this thing. So once I appreciate your service, as always.
Oh,
I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah.
You look great.
Thank you.
So since our parting of ways when I left the city back in 2019, and you were out in, 2017-ish?
My last day in uniform working was January 13th, 2016.
Okay. So what drew you to law enforcement coming out of the military? Was it just a logical move for you, or?
I knew I was going to be a cop when I was probably in 10th grade. It's just I was trying to figure out what I was going to be good at, what my aptitude was going to be in. Everything always just led to service and police work. You know, when you're in the academy and they're like, okay, why'd you decide to become? I want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a believer. You know what I mean? I believed in giving myself of service. My military service was that way, and it led that into police work. Like, this is the best way that I know how to give myself in service to something important.
No, you know this as well as I do. That's not how it works now.
Oh.
People don't take the job in law enforcement to help others. In my personal opinion, a large percentage take it to tell people what to do, to establish their authority, to unleash their own personal beliefs in a professional environment. And unfortunately, there's a lot of officers out there right now that, helping people is actually further down on the scale of life. When we're taught how to think, it's, people, property, and we're way down at the bottom as law enforcement. Now, like cops, a lot of cops, not everyone, there's amazing cops out there that work, but some of them, they put themselves higher on that chain. What do you think?
I think we should clear this up before anybody says they're gonna talk about this, because they're not gonna like it. I know you, and I know how you are, and you know me, and we're gonna get to talking about this, and they're not gonna like it.
No.
And I could care less. So for all the good police officers out there, keep doing this job. We need you. We appreciate you. But for the good officers, what you're about to hear us talk about, and I don't know how far this is going to go or other areas it's going to get into, but we're going to talk about how police officers have, I don't know if it was always like this and we didn't see it, but just the attitude of what law enforcement has become and what I've seen now that I've separated myself from it and I can look back on it from a different lens and realize it's not what we thought.
I think it was always that way. It truly was. It's just, as well as I did. You did decades. I did 12 years, When I came in, you're so gung ho to learn and to improve and get better at your job. At least if you were one of the good cops, that's what you tried to do. You tried to better yourself. You tried to be better for your citizens, better for your partners, and better for the people to your left and your right. I think what happens is we're all blinded by the thin blue line.
Yeah.
And I've talked about that numerous times. The thin blue line only matters when something bad happens. The rest of the time, they'll step over your warm body to get what they want. I just think that we're blinded by the purpose for the first few years, the purpose of what we're doing. And then as we start to get disgruntled and as we start to get cold and as we start to get detached emotionally, we start to see more and more, and that leads to a further detachment. And then by the time we leave, we hate it. Like there's nothing about it we like anymore.
Yeah, there's the number one issue in trauma for police officers. It's the very first indicator, and it's overall the overwhelming issue is irritation. So that's what we experience first, and the irritation comes from the trauma of us dealing with everybody else's worst trauma that they've ever experienced, and that we have to report to on a regular basis. And we don't do well enough. We don't do enough to take care of the police officers in that manner.
I agree. Now, I personally think that, a lot of that has to do with management. Upper management doesn't want to spend money. They don't want to realize a problem's a problem until something bad happens and they react to it. We know that the police departments, the one that we worked for, was extremely reactive. The plans weren't put in action until 4/4 of 2009, when they actually started doing something to protect law enforcement officers on the streets, like allowing them to carry assault rifles.
Yeah.
If they would have had assault rifles on 4/4/9, it would have made a difference. They might still have died, but at least that individual wouldn't have lasted as long as he did.
EK wouldn't have come out of his car with a pistol in his hand. He'd have come out of his car with a damn rifle in his hand, sending rifle rounds down range,
yeah,
helping those people.
Yeah, I think what happens is, everybody's worried about the bottom dollar, tightening the purse strings, and having the money to pay the people that aren't union, and give them the big paychecks, like the ex-chief of, Pittsburgh Police, Larry Scarato. He got a nice bump in his paycheck for doing a year as a chief and running that department into the ground. Yeah. So let's talk about that. The real chief, the only chief I truly ever worked for was Nate Harper. He was the only one that was a cop's cop.
Yeah.
What's your opinion of where, in general, and if you want to get specific, departments are going with their placement and their selection for the position of chief?
I've watched it happen, and they're not going about creating a matrix that fits the area that they're going to be policing. Like, is the chief that you're bringing familiar with the issues that Pittsburgh would be dealing with? Larry Scarato should have been, but Larry Scarato was acting outside of law enforcement and leadership when he decided to take this job. He was already under investigation. He was probably going to be charged with a crime had he not left the first time. Councilman Coghill was talking about the issues that Larry Scarato brought with refereeing. Everybody acts like this wasn't a problem before, but it was, because there was discrepancies in his payroll. And he had to go back and change it to make up for days that he said he was working or somebody was supposed to be working for him, and they caught him. And the first time they had given him they gave him a warning and told him, hey, don't be doing that anymore. You have to make sure, if you're going to be refereeing, everything's got to be right, because there's some problems over here. And he kept doing it, and they caught him again. So I believe he was going to be charged with a crime, and that kind of helped shuttle him out. He ends up not getting a job a few places, and then he lands in Lauderdale. The same exact thing happened in Lauderdale, to the point where their, what would be controller, came forward and said, look, there's these payroll issues here. He said he was working and he's on TV refereeing. They were putting together a list of charges for him. And when that happened, Larry left. So nothing happened with that. When he came back to the city, they had that information. And this is where the known lie comes in, because when they got caught, it was seemingly a surprise to everybody. And as it started opening up, we all realized, the ones that were paying attention and really looking for the receipts to prove this, they did that national search, spent $80,000, and there's a political tilt to this. And I'll get to it after I explain this Lauderdale thing. They had a report from Fort Lauderdale. The guy issued a report to them that spelled out all the crimes that Larry had committed in financial fraud and what they were going to do, and they just let it go because he left. Well, this guy ends up getting ostracized for doing that to Larry, but it ends up becoming true, and then he gets elected to their city council. And now he had openly talked about it when this was going on up here. So Larry didn't have anywhere to go. And as a matter of fact, after Larry decided to resign, he gets on Marty Griffin and says, if anybody thinks that I wasn't going to referee, they're out of their minds.
Okay. I got a problem with this whole thing. You worked with Larry for years.
Yeah.
You worked with him on the streets,
right?
Shoulder to shoulder, bumping things,
So
doing what you got to do, running hard.
Same shift.
There was Larry Scarrato in 2007, and there's Larry Scarrato 2024, 25. That man is not the same person.
Nope.
On the outside, but on the inside, very politically motivated now. All about that final paycheck and putting himself in a position where he can be set. Right? So, number one, first question. Larry was just a check mark in the box down the road. You had Scott Schubert was chief. Then you had Cam McClay before him. Like, in the last 10 years, the city has systematically chosen people that are more on the liberal side of things. More on the let's hug a thug thing. Let's shake hands. Let's go kiss babies. Let's go rub heads. Let's do all this stuff. Is there any place in law enforcement to select a position of power or just an officer based on political belief, whether it's liberal, conservative, and personal agendas?
Well, you see it. We're witness to it right now. Larry Scarrato was that. Scott Schubert was that. Larry was a really hardworking dude. He was a really good cop. I've known him since he came on. We worked together, like you said. He was always there. He did good police work. When the LGBTQ community started becoming more active and out, he jumped right on that. And I don't know exactly when Larry became overtly political, but that's where it went wrong.
I mean, he was the golden boy from day one. Like, everybody knew that Scarrato was going to make it to chief at some point because he had just leaps and bounds up the chain of command and in position and in power and in authority within the department. Everybody knew it was going to happen. I remember when I first met him, it was in the academy in 2007. We were doing a simulated traffic stop. And I remember they're like, no physical force. And the guy got out of the car and was disobeying my commands, and he kept coming at me. And I had a red gun, and I didn't have a taser, so I picked the kid up and threw him on the hood. And Larry's in the back row screaming, no, don't do that. I'm like, well, I got a plastic gun, and I don't have anything to do. I'm going to do something, right? And that's the Larry I met and respected.
Right.
Because he understood why I did what I did. And he also was okay with it. He joked around about it because I didn't try to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
But then, fast forward 2019, the guy wouldn't even talk to me. Like, I didn't exist anymore. And we weren't friends.
Right.
But he was always very cordial with me. He was always very polite, and we had conversations. And, by the time we was done, you could just tell that you had to watch everything you said and everything you did.
Yeah.
Because if you stepped on a line, he was going to check that box and take it to the head office and take care of you.
That's right. He, when Schubert became the chief, it's funny because Jason Lando and Larry were positioning themselves to be chief and deputy chief, and they didn't know how it was going to get picked. But what they didn't understand was Peduto had already pre-selected Schubert and didn't tell anybody. Inside, everybody knew it. So here comes Larry. I don't know how involved Jason was, but they were trying to convince Peduto that Schubert wasn't the guy. Like, if you're going to pick somebody, it should be one of them.
See, I mean, Schubert was a good guy. Like, I don't have any problems with Schubert. He was a good guy. I mean, his personal beliefs were based in the Special Olympics. It's a great cause,
right.
But it sacrificed things within the department. My exit interview was like 20 seconds. It was like, hey, why are you quitting? Because this department doesn't take care of their own. Okay, good luck. Have a nice day. That was my exit interview. Like, they didn't give a shit that I was leaving. Granted, I'm just one of 800. But I was always me. I was a diehard. I was going to be there forever.
Right.
And so
that's an important thing to understand what you just said. It's not like when I left, I had completed a full career, and it was my time to go.
Yeah, I was 8 years from a pension.
They still ignored me. I didn't give a shit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I could care less that I didn't have a big, glorious, outgoing interview and the way it's supposed to be. But for you, you're 12 years in. You should be
8 years to a pension.
Yeah, you're past that point where you're secure now, and you're a detective. You know what I mean? You're making it up, and now if you wanted to go
making 6 figures a year,
yeah, you're all set. Why are you leaving?
And that's what really like solidified the decision. Granted, I made my decision in the heart of my addiction, in a fucked up marriage. Nothing was right. My mental health was completely off the charts. I was just an insane individual at that point. You just ask my partners, they're like, he's fucking out of his mind.
Right.
And when I went into that exit interview, like, I walked in there firmly expecting to have like a lengthy conversation about what was going on. Like you said, I was past, after 5 years, you got to stay.
Right.
Because you're not vested till 20 with the city. So you don't make any money. I got a check for $44,000 after 12 years when I left. That was my union contribution. That's what I got. There's your check. Go fuck off. The fact that they didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Especially when I said this department doesn't take care of its own officers, like, that should have a follow-up question attached to it.
Right.
Immediately, like, explain, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And instead it was like, I got another Special Olympics thing to plan. Get the fuck out. Let
me ask you a question. What makes Scott Schubert a good dude?
I base everybody on my interactions. So he was always polite and respectful, always carried himself well, never really did anything overtly, at least in my mind, overtly that was going to hurt law enforcement. Like, for example, Larry Scarrato changed the schedule to where they limited, manpower on the weekends, which is the busiest time of the year at night. And that is what I consider to be unacceptable, because you're overtly putting officers at risk. Scott Schubert never did that. He spent a lot of time doing, this and that. He was geared towards community-oriented policing, which they're all geared towards now. But he never did anything overtly to draw my attention that was like putting officers in jeopardy. He was actually doing the opposite. He was being kind of more for his officers in that, like, the policies and things he did didn't really hurt us.
Right.
So that's why I say he was a good guy. You know what I mean? I don't know him personally.
Right.
Now he's, I guess, with the FBI doing his thing there. So good luck to him. I mean,
it's anymore when people talk about police officers, no matter the rank, and they say things, I want to know why they think that. Like, I know what Scott Schubert did, and none of it's good. It's how he managed personnel. And
yeah, see, I didn't see that stuff. I'm not on that.
Yeah.
Being where I was at the time, I think I just become, when he got chief, I think I was still on patrol. So it was like, my mindset was different. You know what I mean? My mindset.
You're probably not even paying attention to really who's the chief.
I mean, like, I got so used to all the bullshit with that department, like all the dumb shit that was going on, all the DEI stuff that was happening before DEI was big.
Right.
I just didn't give a fuck. Like, I went there, did my job, made my money, came home. As long as I could sleep at night thinking I did the right thing and I didn't have any, regrets over what I did, I didn't give a fuck. It didn't hit me until I was in narcotics that shit was fucked up.
I can see that and I think that's a problem that I have now is I was so into all of it. Like, I was paying attention to every single thing and everybody and how they were all interacting, because I really started to notice why things were breaking down, and it was all leadership issues. Who are our leaders, and what made them leaders?
I mean, yeah, that's 100%.
That's the
Who's
issue.
getting promoted and why?
And you look back and I would say to myself, who was Scott Schubert? Scott Schubert was the guy that rode the wagon out in Zone 5 and really never got out of the wagon to go do stuff, unless it was just picking up somebody in cuffs and taking him to the jail. And then you slowly just mediocre your way through the advancement, and all of a sudden he's the chief of police.
Well, I mean, even now, like when I left, there's guys that went to narcotics that never made a drug arrest.
Yeah, listen.
Like, I mean, it's completely fucked up the way they're moving people around and how they're promoting sergeants. Like, there's people with 2 years getting sergeant stripes.
Yeah,
they haven't even learned how to do the job yet.
It's a big issue. I just did an interview on a news channel, and this is because I'm running for mayor. They're asking me this question because I'm intimately involved. You know, I'm the police officer, so they want to know what my opinion is as opposed to the other politicians. And the question was, why aren't we seeing clearance rates in our homicide division? And I said it just like this. There's going to be people that are going to be very mad at me for saying this, but the reason we're having those issues is because our homicide detectives aren't good at solving homicides. We don't have a matrix that lets the police department know, or nobody decides that they're going to find out who is most well qualified or in tune with being a homicide detective, because it's nothing like TV. It's about relationships that you have with communities. And if you're not out doing police work in the communities, making those relationships, you just can't come out of a favoritism position and do something as important as becoming a homicide detective. Half those people in there have no business doing any of that work.
Well, I mean, I think they also have screwed up that whole system in like GVI and like all these different divisions are breaking every crime into a different division. Like this group just does this group just does this. It's like, you know, if a homicide, you know, for example, there's a gang related shooting or some bullshit happens, you know, homicide's going to show up for that. Who should handle that investigation at that point? In my mind, it's homicide, you know, working with the other groups. That should all be encompassed in homicide. But instead, what they do is they have GVI do this, and they have this intelligence do this, and have this, and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
Right.
And nobody ever communicates and gets across the information. You know, there's a lot of like narcotics, like homicide. Narcotics is a specified position, right? Like I wasn't the best, I wasn't the worst, I was mediocre at best, right? But you have to want to do that job. Right. And you have to learn how to do that job. It's different than being a patrol officer.
Yeah.
You know, investigating overdoses just ruined me. Seeing dead people all the time just ruined me.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that when you guys were in narcotics, you made how many arrests a day? Like 10.
Right.
You know, when I was there, it was one arrest a week, one search warrant a week, and get one junkie and just try to get a search warrant once a week. That's all we try to do. One search warrant a week.
That's
narcotics.
That's amazing.
And that's another reason why I left. Like, I'm like, dude, you don't want me to do any work. Like, you literally don't want me to do anything.
I tell people it's a lazy cop's paradise right now.
It's just so sad because one of my partners, and I'm not going to name him because he's too good of a guy to be fucking dragged down with this bullshit. You know, he was like, I'm just riding it out, man. I'm just riding it out. Like, just do what we got to do. Like, I'm like, you know, so like the last shift I ever worked, it was a Saturday, and we had gotten behind a car down in, I think it was Marshall Shadeland. And, you know, burnout taillight, no turns, you know, weed smoke coming out the windows. Perfect stop. You got 3 violations before you even blink your eyes, right? Because I never wanted 1. I wanted 2 or 3. Because they're going to throw 1 out. I want to keep a good violation, you know. And we're following this car and blah, 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 blah. I think we got up on like 376 and the car takes off. And so we're in a beat up old fucking SUV. You know, you can't lead a chase with a fucking unmarked car. So we're calling it out, blah, 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 blah. Guy takes off. I shut off the lights and we're following him. Like, he slows down. The dumbass slows down once he thinks we're gone and just starts driving normal again. So I look at my partners. I'm like, let's notify everybody. Let's get on the line with dispatch. Let's let them know every department on this corridor that this car ran from us. It's a good stop to pull that car over. They have their reasonable suspicion to pull it over. And they were like, nope, let's just go back to the barn. And I was like, that's it. I'm fucking done.
Yeah.
I never worked another shift. I was like, this is fucking stupid.
Right.
Granted, like I was a drunk and all fucked up, but, to me, that was like the epitome of the reason why I went to narcotics was to arrest drug dealers,
Right.
not sit in a car and watch them drive away.
Right.
And listen, more power to the guys that are still there that know what they're doing there, because they're suffering and they're not, they're just riding out, and it's a sad state.
I remember, I think I remember where you sat in the academy. Is if I'm looking out at the class, I'm standing in front of the class. I believe you were right here on the left-hand side near the front.
Mhm.
You had a good class. I remember, because I was teaching the portion that I taught. I think it was drugs and gangs. And everybody always asks the same question. How did you get here? How did you get to do what you're doing? And I would explain this. Everybody wants to do two things when you're in the academy. You either want to be SWAT or you want to be a narcotics detective. And everybody wants to do that, and not everybody's going to be able to do that. So my advice is always go do the work first and figure out what you're good at. And then you have to start planning on how you're going to get what you're good at. And there's two ways to get there. And I think your class was the first one that I said it to. You're either going to get to a position like narcotics through really hard work, and it's going to take you longer. And that's the way I went, because I don't know anybody. Or you're going to kiss a lot of ass and suck up to a lot of people to get to where you're going to go. And that's going to happen a lot faster. So you have to make a decision on how you're going to get there. And
it took me 9 years.
Yeah.
9 years.
I remember we would talk, and you would be like, they don't. And I said, Mark, listen.
They just didn't want me.
We would be sitting there. I don't even know which place we'd be at, but it would be after work hours, and we would hanging out.
Finnegan's.
Yeah, probably Finn's.
Yep.
Or Ugly. I remember Ugly.
Yep.
We would talk a lot about, because there wasn't so many people there,
yeah.
And it would just be me and you hanging out talking about this stuff. But you were like, I don't think they're ever going to. I was like, look, if you're not straight up somebody's ass, kissing their ass and giving them details and all that other bullshit, it's going to take longer. So just keep doing the work.
Yeah, I was a guy that just came to work. I got with the guys that I trusted, and we just go out and do work and try to arrest people. And, Zone 5 was amazing when I worked there, because, we'd leave right out of the gate after roll call, be fucking 6 cars going and just going crazy. Like, first arrest went out, everybody answered the calls. He came back in, we did it again. Everybody would make an arrest that shift. Like, everybody would work to make an arrest. It was a working zone.
Yeah.
Now you go there, and it's guys that are afraid of their own fucking shadows, and like they tase a guy to death 17 times because they're afraid to punch him in the face.
It's so true. They don't, what I found out, like we were talking about before we started talking about this, before we started recording, that there are more police officers that aren't able to do the job.
Yes,
they don't have the aptitude to do it.
We're pulling from the shallow end.
It's what you said. It's these guys who get into it not because they're believers. I knew you were a believer as soon as we became friends, and you were like me in that. You just believe in it, and the direction is the law, and that tells you what you can or can't do. And there's some use of force issues, but otherwise it's your motivation to go out and do it, and the reasoning you're going out and do it. Well, when you don't have that ability, and you can't train that to somebody. I was a training officer. I had a lot of problems with my partners when I decided to be a training officer, because it took away from the work.
Mm-hmm.
But my frustration was we were getting all these new people coming in, and I'm calling and saying, hey, listen, we're going to do this. I need you guys to do that. And they had no idea conceptually on what to do. I'm like, who the hell is training these people? And you realize, it's the lazy dude who gets 2 days off a month for training somebody, and all they have to do is check off all the boxes on their sheet, and they're done.
Well, that's a good point. How did you approach being an FTO?
I said, I would tell them all, you are going to have more fun with me than you will your entire training cycle. I promise you are going to arrest more people than you have, and you're going to learn more There's only one problem, and I'm not going to let you drive. And it's not because I don't trust you driving. It's because when I see something, you're not going to understand what we're looking at.
Mhm.
And I need you to do exactly what I tell you, exactly when I tell you. And we're going to get through this, and you're going to love it. But I can't have you driving and me say, stop here now, or drive up, cut that right, and jump out and choke that guy. Because you're not going to understand. You're going to be like, why?
Yeah,
what did you see?
The dots aren't connecting in the brain.
You're not going to know. You don't have the ability to know this yet.
I've had that experience working with the ferret.
Yeah.
Woodall. Be screaming at me to stop the car, jump out. I'm like, what happened? I don't know what's going on.
Right. So everybody, nobody wants to hear, I'm not going to let you drive.
Mhm.
But until the first day that you're with me, we're out making a drug arrest. We're out chasing people. We're out, finding guns. I'm putting trainees right in the middle of it all.
Mhm.
On top of answering the call.
Trial by fire.
And it generally worked. There were some people like Julie McGlicko who I tried to not pass her. I failed her. And they came back to me and said, well, you can't fail her. I said, what do you mean I can't fail her? She's not qualified to do this job. And I can't get her past these certain marks. And they're like, well, how about if you just give her the lowest
passing score
rating,
possible, right?
and then we'll retrain her.
Yeah, and then she gets somebody killed, why not?
Well, that's how they went, and I didn't like it. I told them I'm going to write a special stating that I would not pass her, and you, Dave Wright, have requested that I give the lowest score so you can retrain her.
See, I approached it completely different. I was the guy that people hated to ride with because, number one, I'm OCD, so you're doing it my way or the highway. Number two is I'm like, you're going to take reports from day one, because what is 99% of
report writing? Yep.
Talking to people, taking reports, listening and regurgitating that shit on paper, learning the quick recall. Like, it's training your brain, that muscle in your brain, how to handle the basics of the job. We pull cars over and we try to make arrests too, but it literally was like you're writing every fucking report
right
from the get-go, because my field training was like, you're not doing shit. You're going to sit there, Van Divner.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to sit there and do nothing. You're going to sit there and listen to what I tell you. We're going to sit there and talk about how hot these girls are and how much of a douchebag you are.
I remember.
And I didn't do shit with him. And then I had, who did I have after that? Fuck, I don't even remember. That's how important it was. The next guy was like all DUIs, and the final guy was just like, wah, Kevin Walters.
Oh my gosh.
But, I was like, I don't want that.
Right.
Because then when I got out, thank God I could talk to people.
Right.
I had the gift of gab, and I was okay with that. But it was like organizing the thoughts and organizing, because there's a way to write a police report.
Right.
There's a definitive beginning, there's a definitive middle, and there's a definitive end. You can't jumble shit together.
Yeah.
So I wanted these guys and girls to learn, like, this is what you have to do.
Right.
This is how you write a report. That way, when they went to their second one, they could focus on all the other shit.
Right.
They already knew how to write reports. So they would go to their next field trainer and be like, oh yeah, I've done this with Kneebone, or I've done that with Kneebone.
Right.
And then of course, you get the guy that goes, well, my last field trainer said that. Don't give a fuck what your last field trainer said. You're with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was my goal, was to just get them prepared to do the 99% of the work.
Yeah.
Because all the other shit you figure it out on the fly, unfortunately.
Right.
The first gun call, the first fucking stabbing, the first fucking, drawing your gun on a 12-year-old that's got a freaking, BB gun painted black.
Right.
All this shit you learn. You just got to use common sense. Yeah, that's definitely two different sides of the coin on that one. So going from field training and doing that, like you said, you taught the academy. I remember learning a lot of shit from you in the academy, because we were just like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. He was on Cops. Did you know that? Yes, Tony Moreno's on Cops. I'm not allowed to say the episode because I've been picking on him about it for years.
Oh, it's so funny.
But check out Tony Moreno on Cops.
It's on there. It's if you look up Cops, there's 2 episodes that show regularly, and there's one that they wanted to start a new program, and I think it was called Street Duty or something like that. They wanted to add to that, so they used my 3rd episode that they shot to lead that off.
Yeah. There's a line in there, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you hear it.
God, I begged them to not put this
Remember when
line.
we used to be having a couple drinks after work, and we'd play it on the TV at the end of the night, and you'd be like, "Not again."
Don't do that to me, man. I begged the producer to. I said I had made an arrest, and it's comical. It really is street comedy, but it's real. That really happened. These things they're not staged. I'm not that guy. What you see from me is exactly how I policed, and it took them a while to figure it out, but they finally said, "Oh, you're not faking. This is really you." And I was like, "Yeah." But I had grabbed this guy up, and he had a bag of crack, and I ended up saying to him, he says, "What? You just grab everybody you see and search them?" I said, "Everybody that puts crack down their pants, you're caught." He's like, "So you just you grab everybody and do that?" I'm like, "I'm that good."
Yep, that's the line.
You had crack down your pants. I knew it. We got it. You're good. And when I saw it, I went, "Oh my God, you can't play that." I said, "There's going to be 600,000 cops that think I'm the biggest smack off walking around." And he goes, "Dude, I couldn't pull it out if I wanted to." The studio, he said, it's their favorite line ever. It's their favorite end line ever. They can't wait. They have me sending it now so they can produce it now. And I'm like, "Oh, Jesus." And that's exactly what it ended up being. Everybody remembers that line.
It's fucking phenomenal. I had to bring it up. I mean, that's my favorite. That's one of my favorite things. We've talked a lot of bad about cops, but like, go into like the things that kept you in it for as long as you were there.
Oh, because it's necessary. We're not going to, being a believer in what we were doing, you come in and you're excited and you're motivated and you think you're going to go save the world. And I did. I thought if I do this correctly, it's going to make that big of a difference. And really what you're doing is just trying to manage the problem so it doesn't grow out of control and take away immediate threats. Mm-hmm. So because there's violent people running around. There's more bad than good, in my estimation, just from my living. When you get down into the soul of a person, you realize that their proclivity would be easier to do something wrong than it is to do the right thing. So knowing that, we thinking back to how it went going forward, and what I started to realize is I'm not going to fix this, but I can make successes in targeting certain areas. Mm-hmm. In not when I say areas, I'm not talking about in the city. I mean just certain crime areas and what's feeding the problem. So you go about your business. Okay, drugs are the problem. The violence comes from the competition in the drug land. And I do that for a long time, and I was very successful. I was really good at it. But it didn't fix anything.
No, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's you take their money, you take their shit, you take their drugs, and that's the win.
Yeah, it's just
because they're not staying in jail, especially not in this climate.
Well, there is no cure to it, and you realize once I started the political thing and I got into the policies that we were being run by and the end results of things, they don't want these problems fixed because they need to have something to deflect from all their failures. When I say they, I mean the administration and politicians. Mm-hmm. They need something to constantly deflect from their failures. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. I've been involved in these meetings now politically where they intentionally divert things like the mental health issues into, oh gosh, I just totally swerved away from that.
Well, that's cool. That's why we do this thing.
Yeah, man. I noticed that nobody gave a shit. Like nobody cared. Mm-hmm. And why do I care so much? Like I cared. Nobody gives a shit. What are we all doing here? Why am I doing this? Why did Dom Costa, Chief Costa gave me when he became the chief, he pulls me aside because he lived in my neighborhood and he said, Hey, Tone, there's somebody dealing drugs here above, it was a Stagno's bakery. Mm-hmm. He's like, can you take care of it for me? It's right in everybody's face. I got it, Chief. So I go back and I tell my boss, hey, I got to take care of this. I got to switch for 2 weeks, go to daylight. It's like, okay, no problem. So I go and I do a solid investigation on this dude. I know when he's getting his deliveries. I know when he's packing up. I know how he's doing it. I know who he's getting it from. I get 3 good buys out of the place. I'm ready to go. I bang out my search warrant. The whole setup. Now I'm going to put on a big show because this is the chief of police's request.
Mhm.
I get the SWAT team. We're going to do a full-blown call out. We're going to make a show of this so everybody knows Chief Costa's narcotics officers are doing a job to keep Morningside clean because there was a problem coming into Morningside. We go hit it, and all I find is a few little wrappers, a couple here, because, him and his mom were junkies, but he was selling, and couldn't find anything. It was the day, nothing. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It was like a half a stamper in his pocket. So I got him in handcuffs. I already got enough buys on him. I'm taking him to jail anyways. But I'm like, dude, today's your re-up day. What happened? He goes, now he looked at me like I was crazy, that I knew that. And he knew me from the neighborhood. He was like, I don't know, Tone. He goes, I see Chief Costa yesterday. And he looks at me and goes, you better stop what you're doing because my guys are coming for you. And he goes, that scared me. So I just got rid of all my shit. I'm like, who told you that? He goes, Chief Costa. Because I had to brief him. I'm hitting the search warrant tomorrow, Chief. Get ready for it. If you're going to be over at the coffee shop, this is what time I'm going to be there. When it happens, let everybody know to come out and look because I'm going to, I already got the warrant. He's going to be arrested. I should be able to come out. Dude goes and tells him, hey, Dorian, watch out, man. My guys are coming for you. And sure as shit, he gets rid of his whole package. And now he was just basically sitting there waiting for me. Now there's a danger to that, him knowing. But it was really funny because Jason Lando was my partner at the time. And I'm super pissed off. I'm really mad because I had taken time out to do this. I wanted to make sure it was straight, it was tight. I was trying to show off a little bit. And Lando knows I'm pissed. And he gets on the phone and he's talking to somebody. He goes, yeah, it got all fucked up. He goes, somebody whose name sounds like Bomb Pasta told our guy that we were coming and now there was no dope there. And I just started laughing. It was so funny. I was just like, Bomb Pasta, where did that come from? And it was just funny. So just to try to lighten it up, that's when you have good partners. When they know that you're frustrated, instead of being an asshole and feeding into it, they just try to make it light for you. And it's like, it's not that big of a deal, dude. It's not that big of a deal. We hit and miss all the time. And you got your guy in cuffs. He's going off. I was like, all right, but it's still a little frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, that's a funny anecdote about it, but it's a serious problem.
It's a really serious problem.
So me being, PTSD, depression, anxiety, and a recovering alcoholic, mental health is huge for me. It's one of the biggest things I talk about. And translate that type of sabotage.
Yeah.
They do that all the time with mental health. They have these programs in place where you're calling somebody that has no fucking clue what you're talking about because they've never done the job.
Right.
I had a guy on here a couple weeks ago, Josh Shimko. He's a police officer and he's been off for a year for PTSD and his department's pushing him out the door instead of helping him.
Right.
Unless it's directly in their face and unless it affects the pocketbook, departments don't do anything to help their officers anymore. And that's a really sad state because you go back to 2007, 2008, 2009 when Nate Harper was chief, it was go to town. It was a Wild West, get out there and do your job.
Right.
Before that, what it was like.
Oh yeah.
Before that, it was, you guys did whatever you wanted. You arrested everybody,
right.
And then they take away where there's guns, there's drugs. They take away, if you smell marijuana, you can search your car. And they continuously are limiting officers to what they can and can't do. And back to the point of taking from the shallow into the gene pool, these tadpoles that couldn't swim upright, they swim backwards. And, they're going out there and they don't understand search and seizure. They don't understand the use of force. So they don't do anything.
Right.
Now cops don't do shit. And most of it's because they want to protect their own fucking house and what they own.
Right. Tell me if you relate to this. This is how
Yes.
this is how I this is how I saw it. Like where did this go wrong? Why am I seeing these things happening? Like, why are these officers acting this way? And what I learned, and it's from being a training officer and then having partners that weren't qualified to do the job I was doing, and watching how the leadership would treat it. They would send people, when I came up, if you were a hard worker and doing that work, the bureau was always screening reports because they would get sent there. If it was if you investigated a burglary, a copy of the burglary report went to the burglary squad, and they would go over it and they would decide, okay, well, they're handling it. It's no big deal. Or they would pick one up where they would recognize something and be like, you know what, I'm going to pull this one and I'm going to investigate this. Narcotics were the same way. Most of the time it was they were pulling my reports to steal my CIs or work,
to step over you to get something for themselves.
Right. Which really pissed me off. But I learned it, you know, and I know it now. I know what they're doing. I know how to, and I just work around it. But then when I started training, I started seeing that there were officers who just were never going to pick that up, but they wanted to. And what happens when you really want to do something and you just can't?
You force it and you make mistakes.
You fucking cheat. Right? If I can't fucking get my bicep to blow up as big as I want my shoulders to blow up naturally because my body doesn't do it, what do?
Yeah.
You enhance yourself and you supplement yourself to get bigger through some steroids, whatever the fuck they use. Police work was the same way. I started realizing that officers were watching what everybody was doing and they can't figure out how I would get there. So they would just copy.
See me, I would ask, I would come up
yeah,
with,
you'd be like, dude,
how do you know this shit?
Right. Okay,
I wanted to learn.
And you did. You were like, you would tell me, I read your report. I'm like, why the fuck are you reading my reports? You're like, because I'm trying to figure this shit out.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that this happened? So you were that knowledge seeker instead of what I witnessed was, for example, I'm sitting in the office and I get a phone call from the sergeant at the warrant office. And he said, listen, I'm going to fax this report over to you and I want you to read it and you tell me what you think. Because I'm the subject matter expert. The sergeant at the warrant office doesn't necessarily know, this is so wrong. It's what we're talking about. They're not exactly sure on the probable cause of this, and they're trying to get my opinion, which I appreciate it. But when you're the fucking sergeant, you should know all this shit first. Mm-hmm. But that's a failure of leadership. But so I get this report, and the guy says, I ran the plate because a white person was driving through Manchester. This white female was driving through Manchester, and so I ran the plate because white people drive through Manchester to buy drugs. He writes this. And when I ran the plate, it came back to Butler. And we know that people come from Butler to buy drugs in Manchester. So I pulled the car over and I immediately picked up the phone and I said, if this person is in jail, you need to go get him out right now. They're like, are you serious? I went, yeah. You need to get this person out of jail because this whole thing, and then it just goes downhill from there. Pulled him out, handcuffed him immediately, then searched him, then found drugs. And it was a prescription bottle that she had. It was just unbelievable.
I think that's a perfectly legit arrest. That guy should have done 10 years.
Bro, and they were like, you really think I should get him out? I'm like, are you signing that report?
I mean, I think a lot of this a majority of it starts in the academy. We have people that teach the academy. I don't know how it is now, but when I went through the academy, with the exception of like you and Lando and Scarrato and the guys that did the work, they were always like, oh, you got to be really careful. If you do this, you're going to get in trouble. If you do this, you're going to get in trouble. Right. You're going to lose your house, blah, 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 blah. So they fed that negative narrative into your brain at an early age in law enforcement to get you to not do things.
Yeah.
And this was based on the disgruntled opinions of guys that never made drug arrests or never did shit, and they just fucking didn't want they didn't want to get their name called into question.
Yep.
Did you teach them how to do this? No, I didn't teach them how to do that. So they didn't want to be called to the carpet to defend an officer that does something fucked up.
Yeah.
Because you know as well as I did, you did something fucked up, you had a good supervisor. If it didn't jeopardize the case, they were like, dude, don't ever do that again.
Right.
You need to fucking plead this fucking shit out. Like, you need to get it done. Now it's like, you got people that were promoted to sergeant at 2 years, skip a level, go to commander at like 4 years,
right?
And they still don't understand the fucking job because it takes you 5 years just to learn what the fuck you're doing.
That's exactly right.
And then they're reading these reports going, oh, that's perfectly fine. But then they pull their red marker out on somebody that makes a good arrest and they're going, because they never did drug arrest, they're fucking circling everything saying this is wrong. It's like, no, dumbass. Like, I've been doing this since I started. Like, this is what I do. I know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Right.
And I think it starts there. And then it also goes to the fact that, nobody tests for police in the Pittsburgh area anymore, not for the Pittsburgh Police Department. When I tested in 06, 07, there was like 1,000 people at the convention center. Now they're getting like 350 people a year.
Right.
Like, you don't have a lot to choose from. They hired people that while in the academy were character witnesses for a homicide suspect. That's a conflict of interest. Sorry, the guy got fired like 5 years later, like 3 times. But I mean, they're just scraping the bottom of the barrel, picking up the one. They don't want veterans. They don't want people that can make a decision like that and can fucking enforce the authority they need to when they need to. They want people that are going to be community oriented and they're going to hug a thug and they're going to treat people with the respect that they haven't earned. You know as well as I do. You approach somebody, you treat them with respect until they don't deserve it, and then you treat them the way they deserve. Whether you got to rip them out of the car, whether you got to throw them on the ground, whether you got to punch them in the face. You do what you got to do to get the job done. Now these people don't understand the parameters of what they can do. As in use of force, as in search of seizure. Like, hey, you can't just search a car. You need consent, probable cause.
Yeah.
Pretty much it.
Yeah.
Those are the main things you're going to use. Search warrant. That's what you're going to use. You're not just going to go rip cars around. And they're coming out of the academy and they haven't been taught these things because now it's geared towards, don't take me wrong, domestic violence is very important. But, domestic violence fucking programs on community-oriented policing, teaching you how to hand a pamphlet out to the people you go to do calls so they can call in and complain. Like, fuck off.
Right.
Like,
here's how to make my life miserable.
Yeah. Here's how to file a complaint for me doing my job, and it's just become a melting pot of middle of the road.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because when I got in, like you said, I had a great class. Great officers came out of that class. Probably 90% of them went on to do really good things in their job.
Right.
And then you slowly watch the progression over the next 10 years. And you're going on a traffic stop and you hear this so-and-so's coming to your call. You're like, I'm code 4. Even if you're code 1.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't want this guy coming.
Right.
So
I don't want you near me.
Yeah. There's some people you just didn't want to show up on your call because you knew they were going to make it a mess.
Right.
So you just cleared it and got the fuck out of there. And that's the problem. The fact that officers don't want to take a chance anymore.
They don't have the
tool set.
They don't have the tool set. Exactly. They do not have the confidence.
Yeah. You still need type A's to be law enforcement. You have to have them.
It's necessary just in the presence. The first is
controlling the environment from the get.
The first step in de-escalation is officer presence. And when you got an officer standing there with his hands in his pockets, slouched, kind of kicking the dirt, like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I've watched it. I've corrected people on the street. And they don't like it when I do that. But I'm like, look, man, you standing there like that's going to get you punched right in the fucking face. And then I got to do something because you're not ready to react. I said, pretend like you're ready to react. Even if you don't want to, pretend that way. Because if I'm standing there and they're looking at you this way, they're going to take a shot at you and then I got to react. When we're just both standing there and giving the presence of, we're the ones in authority here and this is how this is going to go. It takes that away.
One of the things people hated that we got taught in the academy was verbal judo. I loved it.
Yeah. It worked.
Telling a person why you stopped them, directing the conversation in the direction you want it to go with quick yes or no answers, and then diving in later. Like, I don't even know if they teach that shit anymore because at the end of my career, when uniform officers would, make a traffic stop and I would sit there and we'd back them up, I'd be like, this guy's fucking ridiculous.
Right.
Like standing right in a window, fucking hand in his phone.
Oh, what's his name?
There's like 50 of them that I can remember.
The dude who shit his pants because he could not pull a car over. He shot the car He went on the fire department now.
Oh, good for him.
But
Good for him. They got the leftovers.
I used to complain like, this dude's going to get killed. He's literally got his full entire body in the window because somebody told him you can't open the door. Like, who the fuck told you? Who told you that?
And
well, probable cause.
He worked in Zone 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. DN.
What is it?
DN were his initials.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
What
just a train wreck.
What a shit show.
A train wreck.
And yet he was in favor with some of the higher ups.
Absolutely. They loved him.
They loved him. For what?
I don't know.
I think the whole thing has gotten to the point now where, they want officers to only do when they have 100% accuracy. Like, police works in the gray area.
Yeah.
Like you have this much, but you don't have B to connect to C. But can you take that further? Can you continue to question? Can you continue to interview?
Right.
Can you continue to move that ball forward? And what happens now is they stop. Once they hit a wall, they stop. When we were cops, we were creative. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, for example, one time we get a call for a fucking crazy guy with a garden hoe going at people in an apartment building. So me and my partner get there and we're looking in the window and the window's open. So we open the window, we go inside because it's a violent threat. We're like, okay, we got to check on people. We're going to go in here. And the guy's got this garden hoe. He's just like fucking swinging it around. And I look at my partner. I'm like, hey, see that pillow on the bed over there? He's like, what? See that strawberry shortcake pillow? I'm going to throw it at him. When I throw it at him, you fucking tackle him. Worked like a fucking charm.
Right.
Threw the fucking thing. He froze. We took him down. Didn't get hurt. Took him to get medical treatment for his mental health. But like outside the box thinking is not something they want anymore because in their eyes, outside the box thinking can lead to lawsuits.
Right.
But only if you don't do it right. And if you're not getting sued, you're not doing it right. Because you got to piss people off to get the job done.
Yeah.
Period. And they just don't want to do that anymore because the climate isn't there. Ever since Jordan Miles, like as well as I do, it just went, the morale started going down.
Right.
The restraints started getting clamped down on everybody. And then everything changed after that.
I experienced crazy shit because I came in under the when they developed the consent decree, right? So all the past 6-cell mag light wig splitting caught up to us, and it was the group of guys and girls that I came in with. We were watching it, going, "This doesn't make sense. Why are we just driving up on these people and catching whoever's slowest? And the pile of drugs and guns gets put on that last person, and everybody's getting whopped in the head. This doesn't make any sense to me. Why aren't we watching them and then figuring out where they're going and who they're getting it from?" So we changed how we were doing these things, and they hated it. Our supervisors hated it. Now, this is back in the day when the lieutenant would come out and give roll call and just leave. And then the sergeant would go, "Don't call the lieutenant for anything. Mm-hmm. If you need something, call me, and don't fucking call me."
Yeah. Know your job, do your job.
Well, okay. And then we wouldn't be wondering what we were going to do. It's when something happened, it's like, we have to call him if we use force, right? So I go running, we set up this gig, and we catch the guy and he fights, and now I got to go get some staples in him, or for whatever reason. I have to call the boss and tell him, "Hey, I have a use of force and I got to take the guy to the hospital." So we would argue about who's calling him and telling him, because I'm not. Instead, now everybody's like, "Huh, is that a crime? Can we do it? What do you think?" "I don't know." "Well, let me call." Then they call a sergeant. The sergeant got to call the lieutenant.
Because the sergeant doesn't know what the fuck to do.
Has no idea. Yep. Then the lieutenant got to call the commander. And the commander doesn't fucking know. They're calling assistant chiefs about street deals. It's what the hell happened here? They've completely lost leadership. They're promoting people that have no business being in charge of anybody. Here, Abram, is it Jeff Abram?
Mm-hmm.
Zone 3 commander. I go to a meeting, now politics here.
I mean, you are running for mayor.
I am running for mayor.
Oh, if you didn't know, this is Tony Moreno running for mayor.
Tony Moreno, realsteelmayor.com. Hashtag realsteelmayor.
He's got my vote every time he runs.
I go to a meeting because there's rampant crime up on Mount Washington. I mean, they're just hordes of people walking around breaking into cars. If somebody's interrupts them, they attack them. People up there are really, really, really not happy. They're finding people in their backyards, and the police just aren't coming. So they have this neighborhood meeting. I attend it. The police are there, and this old woman finally just stands up and says, "Tell us what we can do to help you get these people. We understand you're short staffed. We understand that there's rules that prevent some of the things getting done that we all want to get done. But what can we do to help you fix this for us? Because we're suffering." The commander of Zone 3 says, well, they have, if you go to like your Home Depot and you can get one of those Ring cameras, get a Ring camera and then share the video with us so we can track it. And I just went,
how about you put one more car out there and let them sit and watch?
Your answer to this
is spend money, taxpayer.
Resident, is you do our jobs for us.
I mean, that's just the way it is.
It's disgusting.
There's numerous reasons why I left. And like I said, I left in a bad mental state, but it was one of the best decisions I ever made because I couldn't be a cop right now. Like, you know, the way of doing things before was, hey, we got a call for a gun. Anybody fitting that description on that block got searched.
Right.
They got patted down for a weapon. Didn't matter who they were. If they were close to this description, and you get arrest out of it. And it was a good arrest because you were following a gun,
right, you're following
a shots fired call, you know. Now you get a shots fired call and the guy's sitting in his car going, maybe if I wait 5 minutes, I won't be the first car there and it won't be my report.
Yeah. Well, do you know what I just learned? I just learned this, and I didn't know this. They tout this real-time crime center, right? They built the whole Teresa Rocco room is just full of screens, real-time crime. They're going to be watching crime, technology, all that good shit. They don't watch that and address what they're seeing. They only use the real-time crime center as if something happened and they go back and find it. So when I was stunned, I'm like, wait a minute. What you're telling me is we have all this technology. There's cameras all over the city and nobody's monitoring them because we don't have enough officers. This is the makeup, right? You make it up with technology. It should be all those 25 drones that we have out there that we could use. It would take the place of 10 officers. Real-time crime centers should supplement police officers because of technology. We should be doing this better. But instead, they retard it by saying, oh, no, those are on. We're not going to monitor them unless we get a report. So that's why we're seeing these actions happening on the street. People with phones are recording them. You see the police running around. There's the bad guy. And they don't get arrested or even addressed for 2 or 3 days. And that's because they're going back through their video, finding and then using that as their probable cause for the reports. That's how backwards they're going.
Yeah, I mean, working the problem from the end to the beginning.
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
So for everybody to really get a hold of how this works, if I'm watching this camera and I see a guy or girl, I see somebody that looks predatory, I'm going to focus on them, and all of a sudden I'll see some movement that leads me to believe that a crime's about to be committed. I should be calling and saying, hey, get over there and look for this person. We're going to start monitoring them. Go check them out. You could run into a fight that's happening or somebody in the middle of a drug deal. Whatever it is, you could see it. They're not doing that. These crimes are being committed and they're coming backwards. If we really believed in helping people and stopping people from getting hurt, we would be monitoring them 24 hours and addressing them as it was happening.
I mean, in their ultimate wisdom, they're also the same. The department we work for is the same department that sits there and reacts to everything. Yeah. They don't do anything proactively. Nope. You know, they don't want you to go out there and make the arrest. They'd rather, do that. I mean, they also promote people that don't deserve it and, don't fire people for violating crimes. And, I mean, listen, once again, Tony said it earlier, for the cops that are out there doing the job for the purpose and for the love of the task at hand, keep doing what you're doing because you guys are dealing with the worst time you're ever going to see. And it's just going to get worse. But, for those people that are out there trying to do the job and doing it right, we appreciate you, and don't let any of this discourage you. We're just speaking our minds of what we experience, because that's what we do.
Yeah, you know what? It's I know this. Anybody that works in law enforcement right now understands what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Now
they just can't say it because they still work for a department.
They still work there, or it's them that we're talking about.
Yeah, ask me how hard it is to get a cop to come on this show.
I can only imagine.
It's like running up hills in molasses.
Yeah,
it just isn't going to happen, because
right.
People want to say stuff,
yep,
but they just can't.
Yeah, well, I can.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, the guys that I know that I went through the academy with them, they're like, when I talk to them, like, how you doing? Oh, I got 5 years till I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, there is no, for the guys that I know, the guys that I worked with, the men and women, there's a select few now that still are out there trying to do things, but the rest of them have just become resigned to the fact that, what, this department doesn't want to do. Like, the city of Pittsburgh will say that gun violence is down, and that's because you don't arrest anybody for gun violence, so you don't have a fucking stat.
We can't even get the shot spotter reports to match the shootings to the calls. They hid it. They hide that report.
Yeah, I mean, so Pittsburgh, I think it was a study probably back in the 90s that Pittsburgh per capita square mileage has an equal amount of crime to LA.
Yep.
Be just a smaller area. We have the drugs, we have the violence. It's just literally they hide everything.
Yeah.
Because they don't want anybody to know what the hell's going on. Like, before I moved into the new house, like, the first thing I'm checking is checking on there and checking crime.
Right.
Is this a good neighborhood? Is there a lot of crime here? What kind of crime is here? Is there drugs? Okay, I'm not living there.
Right.
Is there gun violence and stabbings and shootings? I'm not living there. Is there burglaries? I can live with that. If they break into my house, I'll deal with it, But I looked for an area that was more nonviolent crime, like the stupid shit,
right.
It's really upsetting. It makes me want to throw up in my mouth to think of the people that I have watched get their nuts cut off.
Yeah.
And no longer want to do a fucking thing because they caught a dirty deal from the fucking city.
Right.
And some of the guys I'm talking about, the 99 crew that got hung up to dry, officers that, did good things, but because somebody didn't like the way they did it, they fired them. For example, I don't know if anybody saw this about 3 or 4 years ago, where the officers responded to like a disorderly male in the street, and like 8,000 officers showed up there. And the guy ended up dying from repeated tasing because the cop was too much of a pussy to fucking punch him in the face and end it. And then they fired everybody that showed up.
Yeah.
For cause, and half of them got their jobs back.
Well, that is such a big deal to me, and it goes the mental health issues that go on. You realize it. I think we all suffer trauma, and it's how it comes out of us that it makes the differences in our lives. People, not everybody's trauma is the same, or how they deal with it.
Yeah, I think it's the ability to process that in a healthy way as compared to the type of shit I did, like drinking and working out twice a day to try to substitute that section of my life that was all fucked up.
So we know it. Why don't they do anything about it? Now, you know my wife, Dr. Patty Paloka, retired major, retired detective, doctor in management and organizational leadership, subject matter expert in mental health training in the state. It's the state model was crisis intervention training in the city of Pittsburgh. I learned a lot being with her. There was a lot of things that I knew just from experience, but there was no words for me to put on it. I didn't know what the labels were. I didn't know exactly how they all slotted. I just recognized it when I saw it. That's dealing with people on the street, but the officers getting treated for. I'm military, so I have this expectation of this is normal.
I think that's just comes with the work. Anybody that's a first responder or a veteran, it comes with, having a fucking stiff upper lip and just dealing with shit. However you want to deal with it. You don't talk about it. You don't cry about it. You maybe talk about it at the bar with your buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like being a fighter and getting punched in the face and having a black eye and people going, "Oh man, what happened?" What? No, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, this is expected.
We become comfortable being uncomfortable.
It's almost part of the job description, but we don't realize, I know I never realized it, that it all sits on you. and it bleeds out in different ways. And so what Patty did was start focusing on officer wellness. And the city was so resistant to it. It's part of the thing that really drives me to run for mayor. It's because I know that they know how to deal with so many problems, and they don't for no good reason. They're allowing us to suffer this way. They're doing it intentionally. To tell you the truth, they are doing it intentionally because they know that their actions, excuse me, their actions are leading to this. We're not at 650 officers by accident.
Mm-hmm.
They did it on purpose. I have the receipts.
Yeah. I mean, people like me, people that suffer from alcoholism and mental health combined that did not know that one was attached to the other.
Yeah.
For a lot of alcoholics and addicts, the primary issue is much deeper than the substance. It's something mentally, it's something broken, something wired incorrectly, something that's just not firing the way it's supposed to. And that's the way it was with me. If someone gave a shit after the first time I went to rehab and followed up and said, hey, we want you to go speak to a therapist or once you get an evaluation, there was none of that shit. It was get back to work as soon as you can.
Yeah.
And then they cut me off, from the treatment that I was getting and said, go back to work. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'll be okay. And I lasted a month or two. It's they just don't.
So let me give you this example of exactly how the city is intentionally failing not only their employers, but their police officers particularly. And it's what you just said. You said that was in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, when did I leave? 2000. So 2016, I retired. Patty had been, I don't know why there was such vitriol to Patty Paloka. And I don't know if there's ever been since her somebody treated like that, but they transferred her 6 times in 3 months.
She tried to bring light to a problem and put it in the public eye.
Yeah.
That was part of police culture.
Yeah.
To ignore, every cop has PTSD to some extent,
Right.
Whether it's severe or minor, everyone. You can't watch people get shot and killed and all the shit that you have seen and I've seen. You can't just live your life as if you never saw it.
Right.
And I think once she stood, we didn't want to go to that class. What the fuck, because she was going against the grain.
Right.
She was trying to reshape the wheel.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, listen, there's a problem there. Let's address it. Let's be proactive. Yeah, proactive does not get involved in administration and law enforcement.
Right.
It just doesn't happen.
It's sad because when Patty had her office, it was specifically set up for officers to be able to engage her without having to deal with the administration.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to go in and give themselves up to somebody and then see everybody else see it. Right. So she was HIPAA certified in her office, 2 locks on, everything was confidential. She was really good about it. I mean, she believed in it. She developed it and then presented it to the department, and they just rejected it. Night turn officers, right? So we don't get paid enough. So guys work night turn and then they work details all throughout the day and they lack sleep. But if they're doing their jobs also, they have to go to court. So there's no place to rest. They're not getting enough rest. So Patty found an office. I won't say who it is. They passed away recently. Found an office, got a dozen recliners donated, so the officers could have a quiet place to go rest waiting for their court cases. Right? Great idea. I mean, that's a big deal for police officers. We don't get enough rest. We beat ourselves up because we have money and our jobs and our problems. But that opportunity was there. It wasn't going to cost anybody anything. But because of this commander was a hoarder, they didn't want anybody to get in their stuff. And Patty had found another office that was right next to that one that would have been good enough, but they said, no, we're not doing that, to the point where that commander went to the chief and said, I'm not giving up my office for this. So then she went to the sheriff's office and said, okay, maybe the county will help me. went through with the janitor that she would do safety checks for because she was on the city safety committee, and they found an area to put these recliners, and nobody would respond. The sheriff at the time and the deputy sheriff at the time, nobody wanted to do anything about it. And she would go and say, do you understand the effect that lack of sleep has on the officers? Then comes the irritability. Then comes the problems on the street. Then comes the addiction problems on how to deal with all these other issues that you're dealing with. And we're causing problems. We're not helping. And the city just ignored it. So when we're talking about this guy who gets tasered, I was intimately involved with that on the outside because I knew what happened. As soon as I saw that, I went, here's the failure. First, that guy should never even have been a Pittsburgh police officer. We're going to talk about Edmonds. And I don't care if anybody likes it. I talk about this because I don't give a shit. And I've never
had. Brother, freedom of speech.
You know what? You've known me in that time when I didn't give a shit back then and I was still working and I didn't care who was telling me anything. And I would always say, you know what? You need to put that in writing because that's not how this works. And I'm not going to do this unless you put it in writing. So people like Renee Kasuda hated me for that. You know, I'm going to get you. You ain't getting me for anything. I don't do anything wrong. You don't want me to go on a federal street and arrest somebody where I have a ton of complaints. I need you to put that in writing. Oh God. You know why everybody hated me in that action, because they used to try to tell me, don't make those arrests, man. It gets too nasty. What are you talking about? This is my job description. So I see this action happen with this guy over a bicycle, right? Jim Rogers. We'll go to the end. Jim Rogers dies because he was an alcoholic. He wasn't drinking, and he was going through withdrawals. He wasn't taking a seizure medication because he was suffering mental illness. Now with the withdrawals, he's really screwed up. That leads this responding officer to believe he's high and not cooperating. So for no reason whatsoever, he ends up tasering the piss out of this guy. And ultimately what it was is there was a free with a sign on the bicycle, free. So the guy jumps on the bike, rides it around the block, puts it back, and he's waiting for the owner to come so he could ask if he could take the bike. A neighbor sees it, calls 911. Hey, I think there's a guy's trying to steal a bike from my neighbor's house right now. They put out the call. Edmonds gets the call. The reason I know who Keith Edmonds is because I was sitting in the sergeant at the time of the academy in Doug Epler. I'm sitting in Doug Epler's office, and he and I didn't necessarily get along because he was a liar, but I had to be in the office because we were doing something. And he takes a phone call, and he turns white as a ghost. You know, unless you really see people react to things, like when you catch somebody committing a crime and you let them know that you've caught them, and you see their color just leave. It's real. I watched Sergeant Epler's whole entire being change. And he hangs up the phone, and he just went, and I went, well, that looks like somebody died. I went, what was that? He goes, that phone call was letting me know that one of my recruits has a warrant for kidnapping in another state, and he's on the range right now. I went, oh, I said, you know what? I'm out. Good luck with that. So what did they do? They go take Keith Edmonds, him and his twin brother were constables. They're politically related to Ed Gainey. When they did the background checks, there's an issue with background checks. They're completely unaccountable. When people do their polygraphs, they can be labeled one way, even though there might have been deceptions that should have been outlined. But if you know the right people, you can have somebody pick which polygraph, which person does your polygraph to pass them or not. So you have a person who had a warrant for kidnapping. What happened is him and his brother, who just got hired, by the way. Him and his brother go out and they're collecting on a warrant for this woman, and it was a minor warrant. As a matter of fact, if they would have told her correctly, she could have just paid it right there. Instead, they went to, I believe, Virginia and arrested her, brought her back, and she was like, "Oh my God, I lost my job and this and that." And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" She was like, "I had to pay this." Like, you could have just paid it. Why'd they arrest you? Well, that started the police get involved. And like, they can't do that across state lines. Shit. It was it wasn't kidnapping. There was another verbiage that they used, but it was basically kidnapping. Because he was up here, it went unattended for so long that guess who figured out the warrant? Markles, the gun store. When they did the background check for the gun, it popped up that he had a warrant. Now, how in the world did the entire investigative services of the Pittsburgh Police Department miss that? Right? It's a national warrant in the NCIC system. So, right there, that tells me the fix is in. But when they don't arrest him, they bring him in and say, "Look, you got this warrant. You got to go get cleared up, and you're out of the academy. Get all your stuff and turn it in." And they let him go. He goes down, goes to clear the warrant, and realizes the statute of limitations were up. So it went away. He comes back and says, "I want my job back because I committed no crime." Well, it was like, but what happened to the woman that you kidnapped? You know, just because the statute of limitations runs out doesn't mean that you didn't commit that crime. And why didn't you tell them that you had something happen and while you were a constable and there was an issue and an arrest? You could have come forward with those things and maybe worked them out. But you were deceptive and somebody did your polygraph and passed you. So they give him his job back. He goes in the academy and he fails. Now, you're only allowed to fail once. He ends up failing 3 times and finally passes. Then he gets out in field training and fails field training. They bring him back in, retrain him, and now he's on the street. So this is indicative of the problems we have in our leadership. You have people that are being passed through the academy for whatever reason that aren't learning the job and the things that they're supposed to do, and there's policy and training that's unenforced. Because not only do the officers not know that they should be doing things, their supervisors don't know what they should be doing. So the call comes out, Keith Edmonds gets it. They call 3 other units to back him up. He immediately gets on the air and code 4s them. I got it, code 4. Now, this is a possible felony action.
Was he even there yet?
No.
When he code 4'd it?
No.
Okay.
So what should have happened?
He should have gotten to the scene, evaluated what was going on as best he could, and then call out a status. Call code 1 minimum to get people coming. But you don't have a code 2 or a code 3 at that point. You get a code 1.
So what should have, let's go even further back. A supervisor should have got on the air and said, "No, he's not code 4ing that. Keep those units going until you..."
You're assuming they were listening to the radio.
Well, that's what's supposed to happen, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, so he code 4s it. The next sound you hear is him screaming for help.
It looked like he was dancing.
It was so ridiculous. What you say when you were like, you're tasering them because they don't know how to just take somebody out real quick. Why isn't he? This is basically a very sickly looking, feeble man, and you're rolling him like a barrel trying to taser him.
If you have to, it's hit first, hit hard, and the fight.
Just do it.
Get it done.
If you're justified to taser somebody,
do it. You
could just take somebody out real quick. You know what I mean? That's what I used to do.
But how many times did he tase this guy? Like 7?
There were 12 activations and only 3 actually connected for full tasers.
Okay, so it's like partial stuns after that.
Yeah.
Like drive stunning almost.
Right.
Okay.
So first, supervisors should have kept that backup going. Now, once everybody gets there, of course, Edmonds is all disheveled. He's bleeding a little bit. He's got a little cut. The lieutenant shows up. The bad guy, he's not even the bad guy. The innocent guy is sitting in handcuffs and he's telling 2 sergeants. One's the strangler. What's her name? Carol Erlinger? I think that's her last name. We called her the Strangler because she strangled 2 of her officers as a sergeant because they weren't responding correctly. Literally choked them, and nothing happened to her. But they're standing there with this guy.
God, I love this show. Shit.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not funny, but it's funny. I mean, Carol, her nickname was the Strangler. She strangled a guy on the street, choked him because he wasn't blocking cars off, and it was our car, our undercover car.
Oh boy!
Why'd you let him down? And we're rolling up, and she's choking him.
You know what the sad thing about? We'll get back to the Nemesis story, but it just shows how diverse the enforcement of laws and regulation within a department are. Because I heard of a cop that got arrested for a DUI, it got thrown out, and they fired him. But yet this guy,
right? Yeah,
like this numerous times should have been eliminated.
This guy,
but yet he's still, for whatever reason,
right. So now I'm watching the interaction. This incident is a big deal, not only because somebody lost their life, and I can point at all the failures that happened, and that nothing came of it, except for the loss of $8 million out of taxpayer funds that went to somebody that wasn't necessarily related to that man. But the biggest thing is he should have been trained to immediately recognize if he would have applied the training that he learned through the CIT, the 40-hour CIT
he would have probably started to think maybe this guy's got some mental health issues.
He shows up and goes, this doesn't make sense here. Why is the guy that's stealing the car sitting on the curb smoking a cigarette? Hey, my man, what's going on? That's the first thing is de-escalation. This is who I am. Who are you? And this is why I'm here. Why are you here? Is there anything that I can help you with? You don't seem to be, is everything okay with you? Can I help you? Instead, Edmonds walks right up to him and starts feeling his pockets. And the guy was like, what are you doing? He's like, you got ID? Where's your stuff? Everything is wrong from the get-go. He fires up the issue, and then the guy's trying to get away from him. He doesn't know what he did wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. So here comes Edmonds not getting compliance, and he just starts tasering him. Everybody shows up, and they don't go through the protocol. This guy is saying to Ellinger, I can't breathe.
I mean, a reasonable officer would have tried to speak to the complainant, find out what's going on, then go over and have an encounter, a conversation. Hey, man, what's going on? Listen, we got a call. Somebody said you might be taking this bike. I'm sure you're not, but what's going on?
Yeah, what's the deal?
Yeah, relatable. This goes
and for everybody to know, yes, we are Monday morning quarterbacking, but we're allowed because we did this.
Yeah, and it wasn't a immediate threat to anyone. There wasn't a weapons call. It was a guy maybe stealing a bike.
Yeah. So that's then it just completely breaks down. They fire everybody. And they all got their jobs back. Even Edmund got his job back. They appealed it and got the appeal to go through, but he's appealing that, and he's going to get his job back.
Hey, well, don't get a DUI and have it thrown out because you'll lose your job. Just saying.
So now they just hired his cousin, his brother.
Great.
His brother,
the guy involved in the kidnapping.
He had the same
lawful restraint, whatever they used.
Yes, just hired him.
Good. Hey, folks, just keep watching the news because there's going to be another really bad scenario.
Yeah, we're so fortunate. We are so lucky.
We're hiring the best. We're hiring the best.
Well, you know what? Even if our hiring process is flawed, the tools are there. The training's there. They don't enforce it. 2012, Mark. Patty went to Texas to observe how they were dealing with their homelessness and their officers with mental health, because it was in Austin, and Austin had created a kind of tent city for the homeless. That's where they went. That's where they got their resources. So they weren't on the street. They had somewhere to go, and it's Texas, so you have a lot of area. And they put up these military caliber tents with cots and everything else. They eat, they get medical attention, they can deal with all their paperwork and get mental health attention. That's where she first saw the co-response units, 2012, where they had social workers, traveling behind the officers. The officers had their own uniforms that weren't police uniforms because that's a triggering effect. You know what I mean? Somebody suffering a mental break, sees that, it lights them on fire. So they softened it, still with all their equipment, just polos, different approach.
More relatable.
Yeah, it's not the cop coming in, hey, police.
Oh shit, I'm in trouble.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Right. So she went, this is really good. I want to bring this back to the city of Pittsburgh. So she does it. She presents it to Schubert. Schubert says, I'm not wasting manpower on this. And she said, this is the biggest problem we're facing in our police department in the city is the lack of mental health direction. The training's getting us there, but there's more that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
They said, no, we're not spending the money. So what she did was she went and got the volunteers from the Department of Human Services in the county. So she had the mental health workers related to Resolve and UPMC. I forgot what that hospital was. Not UPMC. I think it was Mercy. She got the uniforms donated, and she went down to the auto squad. Not the auto squad. What was Gordy McDaniel and
the tow pound, the old tow pound.
Yeah, where they had all the they did all the cars.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't need really good cars. I don't need outfitted cars. I just need 2 cars for this. Do you have 2 extra cars? And they said, yeah, we got cars. She goes back and represents it. I got this. All the officers are trained, so you're not redirecting any officers. I have the uniforms, and we have the social workers ready to do it. They refused. So every reporting quarter that she had to go before our leadership, she would tell them the most important thing that we need to do right now is take care of our mental health problem, and we need to do this. And they refused her all the way through until she left finally.
Yeah, that's when the city puts on the glove without lube and says, enjoy the ride.
Exactly.
Well, listen, brother, we're going to be running out of time here because these lights only run for like 2 hours. But I would love to have you back on again if you can make the time for me. But for everybody out there, Tony Moreno running for mayor of Pittsburgh, please tell the people what you stand for, what your platform is, and why you're doing it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And Mark, let me tell you, I will come and sit and talk to you whenever, even if it's not this. We've been friends. I'm so happy that you're in the place you're at now, man. You deserve it. You are a good man. And I say that because I know how when you talk about yourself and where you came from, it's not pretty. But you knew that you couldn't be that way and that you had better in you. And that's what you're giving everybody now. So I'm really happy for you.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. It means a lot coming from you, brother.
I appreciate it because I know that you're a believer and I know you recognize yourself and you're not shit, bro. You're good. And you bring a lot of good. And now you've just figured out how to bring that good out. And I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
From my heart.
On my way out, tell my girlfriend that.
So I'm running for mayor. Of course, I retired in 2016. And just like we've talked about here, I believed in it. And it didn't get fit. Nothing got better. So when I went into, all right, what's the fix here? And it's our administration. And it's the mayor. The mayor sets the tone for everything. And we could see where we've ended up. So I got into it. I have a firm foundation of what needs to be done here. And public safety is always going to be the number one. And that's a huge failure right now in our city. I know how to bring it back. I'm the only one who's going to present those fixes and bring it back the way it needs to be. And I'm not talking about running around the street splitting wigs. I'm talking about getting good, solid, professionally trained law enforcement officers doing the job that they were hired to do and doing it at the highest level where they can get the satisfaction of really helping the people in their communities instead of running around being afraid. So public safety's first. Second is this housing issue. They're stealing millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from taxpayers in manipulating this housing. And the housing issue is an economic issue. They're driving all these false narratives through because they're ignoring what the real problems are. And that is leading to the violence that we're seeing. Now we don't have police officers to take care of the violence we're seeing. And that's because of the lack of leadership at the top. Housing, public safety, and then our city is trash. Go to any intersection driving into the city, any intersection coming into the city, and look on the side of the road. It's nothing but garbage. We need to clean our city up. We need to get people out of the planters where, our garden planters that are throughout the city, where the homeless have decided to make their living quarters and commit their crimes. We need to get them to the place where they're going to start living their lives like human beings. This city has made it so they treat them like they're animals, like they're inhuman. They allow that. They ask their police officers to step over these bodies to go do some other kind of work instead of addressing the human need. And that's making sure people aren't overdosing in tents and dying without being checked. That's what I'm going to bring. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to make sure that everybody can see our city and be happy with it, that we can live our lives without worrying about what's going to happen next. We can just go forward and allow me to take those arrows for everybody, me to take those arrows for the police department while they're out doing their life's work to help their community. So I really need your vote. It's a monstrosity because I'm running on the Republican ticket. But I don't care about that. My value system doesn't lie in politics. My value system lies in serving people. And I've done that my entire life. And the only way to make sure we get this correct is to let me serve you again in the city of Pittsburgh. So I appreciate your time.
All right, folks. Well, I just lost one of my lights, so we're going to get this thing off the road. Once again, we're on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, all your favorite platforms. You can listen or watch or both. Tony Moreno, the legend, my friend. Guys, remember, there's always a seat here for you at the table. You are loved, and we'll see you next week.
Godspeed. Thanks, Mark.